Interfaith, labor, and environmental leaders are calling for action on climate change in response to Pope Francis's speech to Congress.
NBC7's Liberty Zabala is live at St. Joseph's Cathedral on how they want the community to act. Liberty?
Well, Pope Francis's message struck a chord with many of the people who actually rallied in front of the steps of St. Joseph's Cathedral behind me earlier today, calling for more people to be involved to ensure a cleaner and sustainable planet.
I'm very happy that he did get to address Congress and really bring it out to the people in America, like everyone, and make this an issue that everyone has to pay attention to.
The group is urging San Diegans to sign a statement on climate justice, calling for international leaders to limit greenhouse pollution, change our economic system to be more environmentally and ethically sensitive, reduce overproduction and overconsumption, and raise awareness about sharing limited resources. But not everyone agrees with the Pope's message. Catholic Congressman Paul Gosar even boycotted the papal visit because of his message on climate change. Gosar called it false science and says the Pope is acting like a politician, but should stick to theology.
Someone can still disagree. They may have different data or different experience, and so he's aware of that. That's why he's always calling us to dialogue.
And the group is also holding a forum later tonight at 7 p.m. on climate change at St. Paul's Episcopal Cathedral in Bankers Hill. Live in San Diego, Liberty Zabala, NBC7.
Meantime, on the heels of the Pope's message about global warming, a coalition is forming, including local faith-based groups, political groups, and environmentalists. They're making a statement about a pledge to take better care of the planet, and they say Pope Francis got the ball rolling.
He's throwing it back to us. And he's very clear that we need to be serious about dialogue as we look at these problems and try to solve them. And he personally has sided with the scientists that believe that human activity is part of the global warming phenomenon.
A meeting will be held tonight at 6:30 at St. Paul's Church on 6th Avenue, across the street from Balboa Park. They're looking for idea, action, and solutions. It's open to anyone who is interested in helping the environment.
A group of about a dozen people stood on the steps of a local church, all with signs saying they want to embrace the Pope's challenge there on climate change. This group is called San Diego 350. They were at St. Joseph's Cathedral this morning. That group, by the way, San Diego 350, stands for 350 parts per million, basically a goal to reduce carbon emissions in the atmosphere. They have about 30 different organizations. We're talking nurses, environmental, labor, and faith groups who have all signed a letter vowing to answer Pope Francis's moral call to take action on climate change.
My aha moment is his phrasing of our common home and the care that we need to take for all creation, not just humans, but plants, animals, and our total ecosystem. He calls it an integral environmental awareness to include everyone. And I think that was the real touchstone for me.
And tonight, this group is having a pretty big meeting to talk further about how they can act on the Pope's challenge. It is open to everyone. It begins at 7 p.m. at St. Paul's Cathedral on 6th Avenue. Information there up on your screen. Doors open at 6:30. And Andrew and Erica, they do expect a very full house. In fact, they've already planned on putting extra chairs outside for any of the overflow. Back to you.
In response to Pope Francis's moral call for climate justice this morning, an interfaith group here in San Diego is addressing the community to take action on the issue. Today, community leaders from various faiths, social justice groups, and labor organizations held a forum to create open dialogue about climate change. They discussed goals and ways to take action. These include having people support public transit and renewable energy. A volunteer with the group, San Diego 350, tells San Diego 6 about the importance of the topic.
Probably the most important thing right now is coming together and having this dialogue about climate change and how it affects our own local community.
And if you are interested in participating in a discussion about climate justice, the group is having an open forum tonight. It will start at 7 in the Great Hall at St. Paul's Cathedral, in which community leaders will be speaking to attendees.
A coalition of faith and environmental justice leaders gathered outside of St. Joseph's Cathedral in San Diego to draw attention to the Pope's call to tackle climate change. The group works with young leaders of color. They say the Pope's message on climate change is consistent with his focus on economic issues and the poor.
These effects are disproportionately affecting people of color. And I think that the Pope recognizes how social justice and climate justice are intertwined.
Others who watched today's speech before Congress say they were impressed by how Pope Francis was received.
Everybody was in agreement that what he had to say was important, and I think he bridged the gap between liberal and conservative.
Líderes ambientalistas, así como miembros del clero y de la comunidad de San Diego, se reunieron esta mañana para escuchar precisamente el discurso del Papa Francisco en el Congreso y pusieron especial atención a sus comentarios sobre el cambio climático, algo que dicen está afectando seriamente a nuestra región.
Viendo que hay escasez de agua con la sequía terrible que estamos sufriendo, viendo lo que va a pasar al océano, que va a levantar su nivel.
La diócesis de San Diego expresó recientemente que la visita del Papa a Estados Unidos es una buena oportunidad para comenzar el diálogo entre muchos católicos sobre los efectos del calentamiento global.
Meantime, tonight, one of the topics people are really focusing on is the Pope's message over climate change. Local San Diegans are taking his words to heart, organizing a major forum this evening on Bankers Hill, and that's where we find Fox 5's Abby Gibb. Abby, good evening.
Hundreds of people from every faith came out here this evening, all energized by the Pope's words. And as one minister put it, every single faith's core principle is to care for all of creation, and that includes the environment and its people.
Climate change is a problem we can no longer be left to a future generation.
In front of a global stage, Pope Francis took the bold step of supporting President Obama's call for climate change, urging America to use great innovation and leadership. With our children's futures on the line, those here in San Diego took the Pope's words to heart, acting quickly.
Climate change is a stand-up issue, the most critical issue of our time.
Organizers with the environmental nonprofit San Diego 360 called an Interfaith Forum Thursday evening in Bankers Hill.
It really makes the case for why we need to address climate change and why it's a moral cause and how it's tied to social and economic justice.
As the Pope points out, those causing the least environmental impact, the global poor, are most vulnerable to global climate change. Even here in San Diego, our recent heat wave affected those who couldn't afford air conditioning the most.
We've gathered to express our solidarity with the Pope.
Tonight, religious leaders from all faiths, along with community activists, signed this letter vowing to answer the Pope's call for what he's dubbed integral ecology.
We all share not only the plight of the planet, but the plight of persons on the planet. We look at everything together.
Environmental expert Pat Abbott says the Pope is using a different rallying cry to drum up support from many who may have gone deaf to the global issue.
So it's interesting to see the Pope come in from another direction, from his overriding concern with ethics and morality, of concern for every human being on the planet. Then he's accepting the science and seeing what kind of a threat it actually is.
A threat these San Diegans vow to fight in their own backyard.
And bottom line, as our climate improves, so will the environment for all of the poor, especially here in San Diego. Now, one of the ideas locally is to put solar panels on low-income housing. And Maria, that would be able to save money and energy as well. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Absolutely. Abby Gibb, thank you so much.
As Pope Francis makes his way across the Northeast, hundreds gathered at St. Paul's Cathedral in Park West tonight for an interfaith forum on the topics he's bringing to the forefront.
We are here to talk about not only climate change, but what that means in terms of social justice and what it means for the most vulnerable in our society.
Last spring, Pope Francis issued an encyclical which urged swift and unified global action to reverse environmental damage and global warming. In response, an Interfaith Forum on climate justice will be held tomorrow night in downtown San Diego. Here with the details are Father Emmit Farrell, who helped organize the forum, and Georgette Gomez with the Environmental Health Coalition. And Father Farrell, what makes climate change a moral or religious issue?
I think because it has to do with a change of attitudes. And the Pope is calling for us to change our lifestyles because it affects so many people. And so we have to start a dialogue, and he wants everyone on the planet to be part of the dialogue. He's very inclusive of everyone being part of that. And it has to do with all forms of creation, not just human, but plants and animals and the inanimate resources of nature. But basically because we're looking for a change of attitude, which will change then our lifestyles or our way of acting. No? And he says there will be no ecological reform unless there is first an anthropological reform.
And let's talk about that a little more, because he said this is more than just lowering greenhouse gas emissions. He's taking this broader perspective, as you say, and he's asking for climate justice, which is actually the inspiration for this Interfaith Forum here in San Diego tomorrow night. What is climate justice?
Well, he says very early on in his encyclical that we don't have a number of different crises. It's one crisis, and that includes economic, political, social, spiritual, and yes, environmental. It's all one crisis because it's all one humanity, it's all one planet. And so what happens in one of those areas affects all the others, no?
Sure, and in sort of this rounded way. Let me ask you this, Georgette. So this is a big message. This is a hard-hitting message that it's everybody's responsibility, and let's do something about that. What kind of impact does the Pope's message and other interfaith leaders' message have in San Diego communities?
Well, a great question. Environmental Health Coalition has been working on environmental justice issues for over 35 years already, and really our focus has been in low-income communities because we know that residents in these communities are going to get impacted the most. We already have evidence of that. Residents that live in these communities in San Diego have 3 times higher emergency visits due to asthma, and that is related to our air quality. So this is what we mean by climate justice. This is what we mean of what it means in San Diego if we don't do anything
justice
about it.
For everyone who's most affected by this, as you said. But what are, you mentioned air pollution. What are some of the key climate concerns right here in San Diego?
Well, we live by the ocean, so there will be a high rise and related to our ocean, and we have a lot of communities that are sited near the ocean, so the residents that are by our water are going to get impacted as well. We also have we have a drought. San Diego doesn't create a lot of water, so we have already experiencing, not anymore, but there's a drought possibility. And then we have air emissions. If we don't do anything about reducing our vehicle miles, we're going to have more air contamination, and we can't do we can't reduce our air quality, we can't reduce our impacts, but we have to be willing to do it.
Well, let me move on to you, Father Farrell. What would you like to see come from tomorrow's Interfaith Forum on Climate Justice? What would you like people to take away from that?
That we need a new dialogue, and that we all need to participate in it, because in order to change attitudes and therefore lifestyles, and therefore to preserve our planet and for future generations, and especially for the poorest part of our planet, we need to change the way we think. That's a big order. If you're thinking of the whole world, we have a hard time agreeing on most anything. So what we need to do is get everyone at the table, everyone involved, and let them speak. Let them start to create this new awareness, because there needs to be a lot of pressure in order to bring about systemic or structural changes that the Pope is talking about.
Right, and that's something that's going to be discussed at the Interfaith Forum. Father Emmit Farrell and Georgette Gomez, thank you so much.